My name is Angus McQuilken. Professionally, I lead business development for the life sciences practice at Orrick, which is a global law firm. So if my kids ask me what I do for a living, I say I sell lawyers to the life sciences industry. But the reason I'm moderating this panel today has to do with work I did earlier in my career as part of the founding team for the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, where we were looking, and when we first created that agency in 2008, we were looking at some of the same questions that Rhode Island's looking at now for how to inform a strategy to build a vibrant life sciences ecosystem. There were some differences. We obviously were starting at a different point, and the state gave us $1 billion to work with. All right, so elected officials in the room, take note. What we have as a panel today, and please, panelists, take your seats, if you could. Panelists, come. Is a cross-section of people who are here not just to tell the Massachusetts success story, but rather to focus on how we can inform the strategy in Rhode Island so that you can achieve what you're looking to achieve in creating a vibrant, high-functioning life sciences ecosystem in the state of Rhode Island. So I'm going to let each of our panelists just quickly introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into the substance. So thanks for being here. Let's get started. Who would like to begin? Do you want to begin, John?
Hi, everybody. My name is John Weaver. I'm the president and CEO of Massachusetts Biomedical Initiatives. MBI is a nonprofit leading the growth of the biomanufacturing and biotech cluster in central Massachusetts. We run a startup incubator. We also lead workforce and economic development throughout central Massachusetts.
Good afternoon. Good morning. Brian Johnson. I'm the president of MassMedic. That's the Medical Device Industry Council of Massachusetts. It's a trade association representing the 450 or so medical device companies that call the Commonwealth home. And I also have the pleasure of sitting on the board of the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bob Coughlin. I work at a company called JLL where I do site selection for biotech and pharmaceutical companies. Prior to that, for 14 years, I had the pleasure of being the CEO of MassBio. And prior to that, I worked in government in the Patrick administration and the House of Representatives. And that's when I learned the importance of the intersection between innovation and government. I have a son with cystic fibrosis, and that's what got me into the industry. And I'm happy to say, when I look at that Vertex logo right up there, that's the reason he's alive today at the age of 23. So thank you.
I'm Patrick Flavin. I'm the president of Portal Innovations. I've been working in the biotech industry for about 25 years. Portal is a venture capital fund that also manages several incubators throughout the country. We're based in Chicago, but are in South Boston, Houston, Atlanta, and we're also excited to be managing Ocean State Labs when it opens up later this year. Great to be here.
Hi, everybody. Lauren White. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Seaport Therapeutics. We're located just down the street here in the Seaport. We are a clinical stage biotech focused in the CNS space, depression and anxiety. We just recently raised $325 million, so there are dollars out there, and I'm excited to be here today. I've been in various biotechs and big pharma over the last 25 years.
Welcome to our panelists. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this conversation today. I thought we'd start with a question that sort of sets the table. So from your perspective, as people experienced with helping this industry grow, what are the ingredients that it takes to have a vibrant, high-functioning life sciences ecosystem? Why don't we go in the opposite order here?
Sure. Well, I think we heard from a lot of our prior speakers, talent for us, especially in the private space, is the #1 thing. And I think being based here in Eastern Massachusetts, with such great access to universities, to academic institutions, has really paved the way for us to be able to get the leading scientists, the leading investors that really create this ecosystem, and has led to success here in this area.
I'll just speak to what we try to focus on and why we formed Portal Innovations. It was recognizing that, the recipe where a life sciences hub could thrive is really built around the innovation that's emerging from universities that are throughout the world, but throughout the United States, not just here in Boston and in San Francisco, but in other places as well. So that innovation engine emerging from the university, but places where there might be a lack of early stage capital or a lack of wet lab space that's needed, those components are critical. So the real estate, the startup capital, and then the innovation itself.
Yeah, real simply, if you think of the ingredients of the recipe, like many have said, obviously you need talent, right? But also you need a hospital, you need a university, you need government, and you need will. And you can build an ecosystem and a cluster by getting everybody to work together, and we're going to talk about that more today.
Pain tolerance. Therapy. Long-term vision. I would just say this. We mentioned all of the 5 ingredients, and we could go over those again. You know, industry, academia, investors, government, risk capital. But I think a culture of competition. I think understanding that the work you do in building an ecosystem is all about planting a tree you may never be able to stand under for shade. Everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. You got to have a great plan, but you got to be able to stick to that plan over repeated punches to the face.
Very violent in the medical device industry these days.
Very upbeat. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, at MBI, we always say there's kind of 4 legs to the stool, and it's workforce, infrastructure, making sure the entrepreneurs have the equipment and facilities that they need to be successful, capital and collaboration. And I just say, for the state of Rhode Island, and as I think about what's happening in central Massachusetts as well, you need to have a critical mass of talent in an area, because some small percentage of those people are going to be crazy enough to get up and get punched in the face and start companies and be able to drive that. So really, looking at who you have in your area, figuring out who the really smart people are, and then giving them the 4 legs of that stool to be successful, I think is the key for developing that ecosystem.
So, it's often been said, having been involved with this ecosystem for quite a while, that, you have those ingredients, but how do you make the soup, right? And part of the broth, right, or you could call it a calling card here, has been collaboration, right? That's really what makes it work. So, Bob, maybe we'll start with you on this one, because I know you have plenty to say about the importance of collaboration, and then we'll go around the horn. But how important is collaboration to the building and operating of a successful life sciences ecosystem?
Yeah, if you look at the simple form of academia, industry, and government all working together to be successful, look at Massachusetts. We had industry for a long time, ever since MassBio was founded in 1985 with Biogen and Genzyme and integrated genetics. And back in the day, we had industry. We had academia. You look at the academic medical centers and academic institutions that were getting a great deal, as the dean articulated earlier, of NIH funding. What didn't we have? We didn't have government as a partner. We were known as Taxachusetts. We didn't have a 10-year, billion-dollar life science initiative. We didn't have a Massachusetts Life Science Center. So really, the thing that changed was government stepping up to be a true partner. And a perfect example, if you look from where I am all the way back to the Atlantic Ocean on the other side of Boston Harbor here, Boston Harbor, excuse my accent, right? That's a body of water that ships come in and out. But it was a parking lot, right? You wouldn't come down here. And the federal government put up a courthouse. State government put up a convention center. Mayor Thomas Menino, thank you, Mayor, for being here. None of this happens without Mayor Menino back in the day, and that gave us the ability to recruit Vertex to come down here as the anchor tenant if you were building a mall, right? Everybody talks about Kendall Square, blah, 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 but look what we were able to do here, right? It was a brand new cluster. John's going to talk about what happened out in what's happening in Worcester, and then we're going to talk more about how amazing Rhode Island has been effective over the last year. Patrice, remember we talked 15 years ago. All the ingredients were there, and then when Neil and the team got involved and you created the Rhode Island Life Science Hub, it's all happening. As you can tell, I get a little excited, and I'm going to stop talking right now, but we'll talk more about it. Rhode Island can do all that same stuff, and you have more opportunity because you have space for biomanufacturing, and we'll talk about what happened with organogenesis. It's an amazing success story.
I didn't mean literally get punched in the face, Bob.
I think I caught him with a left.
Bob's 100% right. Collaboration is exceptionally important. I don't think we should dismiss the fact that MassBio was here long before the Massachusetts Life Sciences Initiative. MassMedic was here long before the Massachusetts Life Sciences Initiative. I think the collaboration that came together 17, 18 years ago that I guess really kind of shot us up into this was really the result of people noticing what was going on, understanding that there was something happening here, and then everybody buying in. But it took a lot of evangelism to get there, and it takes visionary people who will never quit, no matter how impossible the odds are, to really create collaboration. So, I think today we have a pretty nicely functioning system here in the state that I hope will continue to grow and will continue to help inspire other ecosystems. But it's really just, it starts with people that refuse to quit, that see the future, and they're not going to stop till it's done. And I think that is, so this culture thing I talk about, like, when you can get to the point where a person in a lab, understands that if I work really hard and I get people to follow me, that someday I can make all my dreams come true. I can cure a disease that killed my, grandma, and I can also set up my family for future generations. That's when you have an ecosystem, when the belief is inherent in the everyday people that are a part of it. When kids, say I can go work at a lab and I can work my way up, or I can go work on the machine shop floor and end up CEO of a medical device company. I mean, that's where we need to get to. And so, but it starts with vision and passion.
Sure. Well, I think as we think about collaboration, we've got a bunch of people from Massachusetts on a panel talking about the opportunity for Rhode Island. And as I think about this is a global competition for biotech and biomanufacturing. There are countries, there are states that are much, much bigger than any of us that are fighting to get this market share. And as I think about what's happening, we need to start building a New England cluster. As Cambridge continues to grow and expand, and as the success of this continues to grow and expand, we saw in 2021 and 2022 some of the challenges of that. As talent was really at a premium, traffic was at a premium, the lab space was at a premium, you weren't able to find these things. And I think the key for us to remain number one in New England is for us to start thinking about growing that cluster out from Boston and Cambridge. And we always talk with Neil about the idea of building a biotech triangle or a biotech diamond, even including Boston and Cambridge, Providence, Worcester, up to Manchester, New Hampshire, because this industry is going to need room to grow. And if we want to be number one, we need to think about how we stay in that game. We're competing against North Carolina. You could fit 5 New Englands in North Carolina. So how do we get out and really try to capture this market, think collaboratively, and work as a New England ecosystem?
Agreed. Well done. Lauren, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I think another angle of collaboration, and it was touched on earlier in the conversation, is especially me being in the private sector, is the partnerships with larger corporations. Vertex, we at Seaport, all the other companies I've worked at, there relies on that relationship with big pharma and being able to take the promise of what science can be put forth with biotechs and really bring it forward and invest the dollars and the infrastructure that's needed to bring that forward. So it's been great to see that here in the Boston area, and I'm really excited to see what can come out of Rhode Island as well.
Patrick?
Yeah, so as somebody who's not a Boston guy and, from Chicago, maybe my perspective on the area is the New England region, the cluster. Like you said, of any other part of the country, it would probably, New England would be a state just in and of itself. And I get to see kind of everything that's happening across that region. So it's amazing, and how you bring that together. I look at Rhode Island as being an opportunity to kind of catalyze the whole region too, everything that's here and then everything that is in Rhode Island to kind of bring that forward. But to the question around collaboration, yes, this is a totally different industry than really any other industry I can think of. If we're all going to go start a tech company, we can do it in our garage. We don't need really, even startup capital to get going. We can build our product and try to take it to the market and start selling it. We're in a space where there is no such thing as revenue for, a decade. And so to get to that milestone, it takes 50 different parties to come together. So I'm used to that. I think that's, part of our mission at Portal is how do you bring people together so that you can kind of create the innovation that happens by bumping into each other. And again, just talking about where we are, this happens all the time here in Cambridge, in Seaport, anywhere in the region here, that happens. I think everybody is used to that. When you're not coming from that in places like Chicago or Atlanta or Houston, you see how when you don't have that, when you're not bumping into people, when you're not drinking beers with people who are starting new companies or meeting venture capitalists, just when you're out and about, if you always have to fly to the JP Morgan conference every January, try to scoop up as many opportunities as you can there to last you a year, it's very difficult.
Very good, very good. So we're going to drill down on a couple of topics here. So when the process started, when the strategy started here in 2008, we didn't have a bioincubator on every corner, right? Now, there's an abundance of incubators to choose from. One of the earliest investments made by the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center was in Lab Central, $10 million to build Lab Central, another $10 million a couple of years later to expand it. That catalyzed, right, the bioincubator industry here, which has become big business. And so we have 2 incubator operators here. We have an expert in life sciences real estate as well. We know this is one of the early investments that Rhode Island is looking to make. So how important is it to have that as an available resource as you're looking to grow an ecosystem? You want to start?
Sure. I would just, I guess what I would point out to that is that entrepreneurship, particularly in biotech, is extraordinarily hard. You're taking someone who's a world-class, brilliant, scientist, and now you're telling them that they have to go raise enough money to bring a product to market without any revenue for a decade, and it costs typically about $1 billion. So putting that scientist in that opportunity is difficult enough. The incubator model is really set up to try to make it just a little bit easier. So instead of having to go out and raise a really significant sum of money, build out their own facility, buy all their own equipment, hire the staff to manage it, the incubator, they can show up on a Friday, go through the process, start their company Monday, all the infrastructure's in place, the equipment's in place, and a lot of the support structure and support staff are in place, which reduces FTE count. So the incubator model is really just intended to make that process a little bit easier. Come with that, part of what Patrick mentioned is now you're going into a facility where you have a bunch of like-minded folks. There's not a lot of people who can understand the entrepreneurial experience. But when you're co-located with 40, 50 other entrepreneurs, you have that support structure built in, and it really helps that entrepreneur dramatically increase their level of success. With an MBI, we've got a pretty unique infrastructure and a pretty unique setup within the ecosystem of how we've taken on that challenge. But I think all of that has resulted in around 80% success rate for amongst the startups within MBI. And if you look at what the typical success factor is for an entrepreneur on their own in the wild, it's 10, 20%. So leverage all the resources you can in the ecosystem. If you're thinking about starting a company, go out, find the infrastructure, find the support system. It's there. Go leverage it, because it's hard enough to do it on your own.
Great. Patrick, thoughts on this?
Yeah, happy to jump in. I think, to me, the exciting part of the incubator model is probably the evolution toward the market-driven incubator, where, traditionally you saw government funding those incubators, and the type of companies you're attracting there. In the beginning, they may be dynamic with great ideas. Sometimes they may reach a point with the company where they're not moving forward, and they tend to become a more zombie-like company that's at an incubator for a long time. And so the incubator loses the dynamic nature that you're creating it for. What I've seen since, the beginning of this model is that now you see a lot more investment going toward those incubators, meaning venture capitalists are looking toward those incubators to be a pipeline for them to identify new leads. And so I think, you're starting to see more activity around how can there be a more market-based incubator model where, like for what we do, we're investing in the companies that are working out of our space. So we have a vested interest in making sure that the companies we're picking are ones that we think are going to move forward. Obviously, it's biotech, so if I knew of that, I'd probably be hanging out with Bob in Ireland and retired at this point. So, but I think for a long time the word incubator to me was like, we don't want to be an incubator. We don't want to be, but it's evolved too. So I embraced it.
Bob, thoughts on this?
You can't build a cluster without adequate incubator space. It just doesn't work. Think of how many times back in the day we'd go down to Brown and Lifespan and URI and meet with Tech Transfer, and if they had something that was translating into a company, we'd put them in an incubator in Massachusetts. There's no need for that. They can go more local, but there was an opportunity there. And then you're also going to start thinking about what's next after incubators. You need adequate grad lab space for when people graduate from incubators. They're not ready for a big campus yet. And why does this all work? If you focus on you focus on company creation and everything that the small companies need, that's how you recruit the big companies to come here. Back in 2007, we had 2 major pharma companies had a physical presence here. Now it's 19 of the top 20 because they came here because we were growing small company opportunities for them to do BD deals with. So it's that big, cycle, and none of it works without incubator space. So I think one of the most exciting things that the Rhode Island Life Science Hub, by creating that and then focusing on things that government can solve, fill voids that need to be solved so that you can have a successful cluster. And that's all happening in a very short period of time.
So we talked about another important ingredient being investment dollars. Lauren, as a CFO of a life sciences company, love to hear your thoughts. I often hear that from emerging clusters and ecosystems, that that's a key ingredient. They have to figure out how to incorporate it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the importance of that element.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, being a CFO, investment is near and dear to my heart. And I think in this day and age, especially hearing the talk earlier, one can get a little nervous about what the future holds. But I think I remain even more optimistic that good science does get funded. Now, the bar may be higher, right? Like, you may need to have clinically de-risked assets. You may need to have a path to commercial. So for the very, very early stage science, that is still a struggle. But there are definitely investors out there. And it'll be really interesting to think about, obviously, when Bob talked about the ecosystem here, a lot of investors are based here. So one question I would have for the Rhode Island team is, how do we get more investors into Rhode Island? I think that'll be a critical piece to kind of that complete infrastructure in that area as well.
And Patrick, it sounds like Portal's going into Rhode Island. Portal is both an incubator operator and a VC. So
Absolutely, yes. And I think not just that. I mean, we're bringing what we're bringing, but it's not an unlimited checkbook, unfortunately. So, but we're bringing a network of investors that we've partnered with, over the last 25 years, and have built trust up with, that they know, okay, you're there, you're working with these companies, you're putting money into them, we want to come in too. So it's great if they can move into Providence and move into Rhode Island, but really, no offense, we just want their dollars to move into Rhode Island. So that's easy. It's not that hard.
all right, so a question for John and for Brian. Proximity, right, to life sciences innovation, adjacency. You've been part of the strategy in Worcester and have had a lot of success at translating proximity with the right local strategy into finding a piece of the pie in the life sciences. Rhode Island has adjacency, proximity to the world's leading life sciences ecosystem. How do you leverage that proximity in a way that allows you to expand and grow in your region?
Sure. Well, so last July, MBI wrote a regional biomanufacturing strategy that outlined what we thought the community needed to become globally competitive around biomanufacturing. And I think a big part of that recognized that there's a significant amount of companies that are located in Boston and Cambridge that are starting up that would benefit and would like to have their manufacturing within 60 to 90 minutes of their facility. So if we could help Central Massachusetts, and I think this extends down 146, as we just saw with Organogenesis, the old Rubius site too, is if we can get more and more of these manufacturers to locate their facilities within close proximity to Boston and Cambridge, it's good for the economy up here. It leverages the workforce and the ecosystems that exist further out from the city. But it also helps us keep that R&D company, because once their manufacturing leaves, we've got a better, those states have an opportunity to try to grab those companies too. So it helps us retain that market share in New England. I also think from a company perspective, what we've seen is that the biggest cost of biomanufacturing is a failed trial. So if they're able to locate their facility closer to Boston and Cambridge, if they're able to drive to take on a technical challenge, their opportunity for success gets significantly higher. And if we can help those companies, get through that clinical trial process by manufacturing locally, tackling challenges locally, they have a much better opportunity to get drugs to patients. And that's a big part of what we're focused on.
And Brian, there's a lot of med tech in Rhode Island. You bring the med tech perspective to this conversation. Love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I'd happy to share them, Angus. It's funny because MedTech has missed a lot of the investor exuberance of the past 15, 20 years, but yet has still steadily grown and steadily expanded its footprint in Massachusetts. So it just goes to show you that you want to be looking for the technologies that are going to stand the test of time and are going to grow, because you make the best tech in the world, and I think that that's what a lot of these companies do. They make the best technology I've ever seen, and it's an honor to work with them. Proximity is nice. Massachusetts is a good scaffolding for Rhode Island to grow. We have a lot of domain experts to be tapped. There's a lot of companies to have early conversations with, but I think investment in the Browns, the URIs, and the lifespan and your hospital systems, That is where your renewable energy source is going to come from. What are your indigenous technologies that can grow and don't have to leave? That's where investment should be really focused. And the proximity to a larger market is good, but it should be something that you leverage to increase your own success, not to sort of think you could bank shot off of it. I think there's a lot of incredible technology being developed in Rhode Island, the Brown system and URI. I mean, there's, $400 million in NIH money that went there. It's about capturing and leveraging every penny of that you can, and then leveraging what we have just a little bit north to help grow and expand your ideas. And I know that this is sort of a state level conversation, but I mean, Dr. Jha was right. I mean, we're in a global fight for this industry and this technology, and we can't really think about these borders that exist between us. We have to all acknowledge that New England is part of the United States, and we are in a global fight for the life sciences dominance, and this is going to be our industry of the future. We all have to continue to work together and leverage each other. And I will just say, there are other ecosystems that are doing really interesting, aggressive things that we have to keep our eye on. I think just look at what they've done in Texas with their Cancer Research Institute and what they have on the ballot right now, DPRIT, which is a $3 billion 10-year initiative in dementia and Alzheimer's. As one of the leading clusters of neurotechnology, we should be paying very, very close attention to that, because that is Rhode Island's indigenous tech. So they're going to be coming up here with a lot of money, offering a lot of perks that we can't offer. So we better stick together, and you better continue to grow your farm system, because that's how you're going to stay relevant for a long time.
All right, I'm signaled that we are done with our time, so let's thank our panelists. And thank you all for being here. Just going to close with one point. When this work started in Massachusetts in 2008, we were in a period of economic slowdown, right? Investment dollars were scarce, right? And so we had to put in place a strategy to grow through that slump. So I leave that as a hopeful comment for the audience here today. With the right strategy, Rhode Island can do the same and grow through the economic headwinds that we're seeing for the industry right now. Thank you all very much. We're going to set up for the next panel.